Welcome everybody to the Botanical Research Institute of Texas for the opening reception of the Hidden Beauty of Plant Patterns. My name is Anna Nino and I am the librarian here. And I appreciate y'all coming out to see this wonderful exhibit showing off the beautiful nature of these close-up photographs of cacti and succulents. So I'm going to start by introducing our two speakers. The first of which is the artist whose artworks are on display over in the exhibit hall. And this will be up, just so you know, if you can help us spread the word, it'll be up through September 15th. And so there will be plenty of opportunities to come and see the exhibit, though it's Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., which I realize is kind of limited in terms of the time frame, but we will have a closing reception as part of the fall gallery night on Saturday, September 6th. Okay. So I'm going to start by introducing Victor. So Victor Mozqueda is an international nature photographer and naturalist based in Texas. Victor graduated with a master's in architecture from the University of Texas at Arlington. Victor's specialty is macro photography, exploring the fauna and flora around the world. By design, his works are simple reflections that allow observers access to the exquisite intricacy of the planet. He emphasizes color, texture, symmetry, and the abstract to convey an appreciation of nature's most fascinating patterns. Hiking trails and gardens, parks and forests are favorite exploration sites where Victor continues his search for both the unique and commonplace to add to his collections for study, documentation, and display. As an avid volunteer at Fort Worth Botanic Garden, Victor eventually became a Living Collections Living Associate, where he spent his time photographing and documenting the third largest begonia collection in the Americas here at Fort Worth Botanic Garden. Victor's current works and concentrations include arthropod studies, along with favorite plant interests such as cacti and succulents. And now I'm going to introduce Nancy Pick, co-author of Do Plants Know Math. Nancy grew up in Chicago and began her professional life as a reporter for daily newspapers in New Hampshire and Baltimore. When she moved to rural Massachusetts to be with her future husband, she had to rethink her career. One day, an old friend who ran a museum called to ask if she knew anything about orchids. "Nope," she replied, "but I can learn." In composing museum labels for that orchid exhibition, she realized she loved writing about nature more than anything. Her first book was The Rarest of the Rare, published by HarperCollins, about the natural history collections at Harvard University. For her latest book, Do Plants Know Math, published by Princeton University Press, she teamed up with a physicist in Paris, a biologist in Chile, and a mathematician near her home in Massachusetts, in addition to Victor as the book's photographer. Her role was to be a translator from a difficult language, the scientific, and she gave the book its unified voice and light touch. Do Plants Know Math is the winner of the 2025 Prose Award in Popular Science and Mathematics from the Association of American Publishers. So I'm now going to turn it over to our speakers, and I'm going to make sure that our microphone is working. Okay, it's working. Good. Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Jason. Right.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for showing up and for taking the time. It's a big turnout, actually. I'm so happy that everyone showed up. So, and thank you, Anna, Nancy, and everyone here at the BRIC for giving us this opportunity to have this exhibit and to show y'all the plants and the patterns. So, here we go. We're going to talk about plant patterns. And so first, briefly, I'm going to talk about me, how I got here to this point to show you this exhibit. So I was, about 6 years ago, I used to live here in Fort Worth, and we had a garden. It was not developed this much. This was the mature garden, pretty much for us. This is after maybe 40 years. But when I started doing a garden in the backyard, I started noticing the insects that were coming and visiting us. So to me, that was exciting. So exciting to see butterflies, moths, bees, wasps. Some people don't like wasps. I think one day my neighbor was kind of saying, hey, there's a wasp nest on my house. Can you remove it? And I was like, sure, I can remove it. So I was, afraid at first to removing this wasp because they can get you, and they can get you, hard. But for some reason, I got comfortable. I got comfortable with them, and so I was able to place it, in a different place, not like glue it back. You must remove it. I don't want to sound cruel, but okay. So, who has had a garden or worked on a garden, knows about it? Okay, a lot of people do that, right? All right, so you know that you're going to go into a war fighting these non-beneficial insects, right? So I had my first encounter with the aphids. The aphids were so stubborn that were showing up every summer. But the first summer, I remember saying, okay, I'm gonna go and pinch these little aphids out because I don't want to use any insecticides, anything that will harm the plants or insects. So I was like, I'm gonna just remove them, spray water, pinch them, I don't know, shake the plant. But it's just a battle. That battle gets you furious sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I'm just gonna, remove parts of the plant, and sometimes that's the solution. If you want to do like hot, warm, soapy water on that, yes, you can do that. I don't know what happens. I guess you suffocate them. I don't know. But anyways, you go through so many wars with those insects, but at the same time, you are taking care of the other insects too that are beneficial, and you want to keep your garden, looking sharp, and you learn so much about it. So by me doing so much yard work and going into looking at flowers, you see these tiny insects. It's not just the butterflies. There's many other smaller insects that live in those plants, and not just on the plants or the flowers, but they live in the roots, on the plant. And so that's a healthy environment for the ecosystem. And so when I was doing that, I noticed that, I can't really see that part, and I want to see that insect, that tick, or that tiny spider, or, another small insect that you cannot see with the naked eye. So I invested in a camera. I started taking pictures, and I started seeing so many insects. This is, again, some of the bunnies here that came to the house, and Mama raised them there. This was, I think there was 3. The other one's probably behind. I don't know. Up there, I think. Some of the cacti blooms have found up with the cactus. That's part of our yard out there, backyard. This is some of the blooms that are recorded when they were blooming, because some will be like 1 day, 3 days max, and then they'll close. But the blooms are just gorgeous. So, yeah, more flowers, more cacti. As you can see. Okay. So I invested.
Can you go back to that?
Yes.
The one
Oh,
before?
sorry.
The Mill Road,
Yep.
second from the right, the
Yes.
pink.
The
Do
pink.
you have that in your yard?
I have 2, but small. I think not exactly that one, but yes, similar.
Oh, okay, cool, I'm not really big ones.
Yes. Do that, yes. And there's a basketball going on. So they might have some over there. Okay. So I invested on the camera, and I started taking pictures. So I used to come to Fort Worth Botanical Garden a lot, back in the days when it was free. So I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. So I came and I used to walk the trail gardens, and that captivated me because there are so many blooms. And right next door you have the cactus greenhouse, and I was taking a picture of this bee right here. So when I took the picture, it was my first time taking the picture. I didn't really see the details until I went home and loaded the picture onto my computer, and I was blown away with the details, like the pollen on her hair, on her face. I say her, but I don't know if it's a her. Yeah. But so I went back. I wanted to come back because I was wanting to take a picture of the bloom. It's a cactus. This is a bloom from a cactus. So I came back, the bloom was closed, but then I saw that in the greenhouse they had a club, the Cactus and Succulent Society, club. So I went and joined the club. Since then, I've been a member. And I have been exposed to so many kinds of plants, cacti, succulents. And so since then, I've been practicing, okay, this is an example of what I was doing when I was photographing plants. So this was when I was in the School of Architecture too, where I learned a little bit about Fibonacci sequence and the golden section. So I was looking at these plants and looking at the pattern. I wanted to isolate the spines. I wanted to isolate the color. I wanted to see a little bit more of this and that. So I was just playing. I was just, not really making studies, or yes, I was making studies, but it was for myself. So I learned that there was something there, but I couldn't figure it out. So I was intrigued since then, and later, after I collaborated on this book, I learned so much about what's on those plants, what I was seeing, and all these patterns make sense to me. So after doing that, taking pictures here, I wanted to take it to another level. So I wanted to go and travel just various parts of the world and take not just pictures of plants, but take pictures of insects, frogs, arthropods. And so this is in Costa Rica, just a sneak peek of what's in Costa Rica. I have so many pictures of Costa Rica. I spent there for like 2-3 months, and then photographed so many frogs. I was in search for frogs. As you can see the details, or the patterns, the colors, and most of these are going like instinct. So that one over there is very endangered. It used to be, I think, 5 or 8 species. Now there's 3, and that's because they're just clearing territories. And that's one of the things that we want to bring awareness. That's important to know that what's in there, what lives there, and for us to protect that area. So I did. In Costa Rica, I also stumbled into some ferns. And again, the patterns are there. Looking at these spirals, and these are 3 different kinds. And the one at the far right, that's the one that is on the cover of the book. The plants don't matter. So this is again Costa Rica, some of the Peru, some frogs. I love dragonflies. Brazil. Again, I do not alter the colors because I want to keep the colors that the insect has in this environment, or just any time, to not confuse any scientist or anyone with the ID of the animal. So that's what you will see. When you see this dragonfly, when he opens the wings, it's just iridescent blue. When he closes the wings, it's like black. You can't see the colors. But dots over here, patterns. Here in Texas, I have so many dragonflies. And you see, this is Mexico. You see the pattern on the butterfly in the middle. 88, and that's actually her name, the 88. So if you go online and look for 88 butterfly, you will find her. That's 88. There's so there's 1 to 100, and you can find those. No, I'm just kidding. There's the 86 and 88, and I think there's a 90. A to Z. So okay. So I was, again, going back to the patterns, I was intrigued about the patterns, you find it in mollusks, so that's snails, spider webs, butterflies, caterpillars over there. again, so many symmetries that you see, like stripes, spots. Those are eggs. Forget what insect, but I think that's like a kissing bug. I'm not sure. No, they're not butterflies, but yeah. Oh, this is the 80. This is the 80. The 80. You see the pattern? Yeah. Maybe that's the 1,100 and I don't know. That's the 111. Oh, anyway, so again, more patterns. So why patterns, right? We're trying to understand patterns, and we see it everywhere. Sometimes we just see them, but don't understand what we see in, and is it a pattern, is it not, or is it just beautiful, right? But, okay, so we're going to talk about some vocabulary, so you can understand a little bit of the patterns, the book, the sneak peek of the book, and so you can understand about plants, what I'm showing here. So, did you know that there's 28 types of spirals? Now, there's many spirals. There's some on 2D, like on one plane, and there's some that are on 3D, like a helix, over there, far right, in the middle. So those are patterns that, or spirals that scientists have to, for them to be able to describe them, they have to know what they're seeing, how to study it, how does it behave, and so on. So there's, now that we're talking about spirals, I'm showing you here at the bottom, this cactus is also on display, just the top view and the side view, where you can see that it doesn't just live on a 2D plane. It's not, you know, you might see it 2D, but I'm showing you the other picture because you can see the dimension, how it is on a helix, right? The spirals are not just moving outward, but they're moving outward, but in, down to the body of the cactus. There at the bottom, you have two similar, very similar spirals, and those are the ones that we're going to be talking about, actually just one of them, which is the Fibonacci sequence. The other one, actually the Fibonacci spiral, and the other one is the Goldman spiral. So we're going to focus on that other one. So, yes, spirals. You see them, sunflowers, some tendrils, some of the horns, weather patterns, galaxy, or DNA, double helix, and some of the phyllotaxis. The phyllotaxis is pretty much the plant arrangement, how plants grow and move, and their leaves, how they take turns and grow. You can see on the far in the middle, actually, how there's not just one pattern, but there's two, and there's actually many ways of them growing and distributing their leaves. Just want to focus on these Archimedean spiral and the logarithmic spiral. So their differences, you can see that one is much going into a circular, going inwards, and the other one kind of stays constant, like if you were to roll a hose, you know, or a rope, you know, it's constant. This little millipede over here, it might seem different. It might seem similar to the other one, the logarithmic spiral, but it's not. It's just that the little legs are extending to his body, but he's still the same length. So he brings up almost like an Archimedean spiral, if you see it that way. This one over here, the one from the cover, is actually, so that's a debate. That's a debate, but I say that it's more of a logarithmic spiral, and it can start like a Archimedean, and then it can go into logarithmic as it growing, as it unfurling. So this is the Fibonacci spiral. The one that I show you, the ones that were then almost similar. And the Fibonacci sequence, you know, the spiral is built of the sequence. So the sequence is a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones. So you see this series over here, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 8. So you pretty much count the 1 plus 1 gives you the 2, 1 plus 2 gives you 3, 2 plus 3 gives you, actually, I'm missing 1, 5. I'm missing 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, there should be a 5 there. But you can see it over here on the spiral. So the 5, 8.
He's just testing us.
Yes, it's a test. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, there should be a 5 there. Did you know you get it though? The counting, the sequence, right? All right. So you actually find this numbers. Yes, that's correct right there. You find these numbers on pineapples. We have a pineapple. You find artichokes, pine cones, and many, many plants, like the ones that you're seeing. Yes. Sparrows.
Usually 5 one direction and 8 the other.
Yes. And then there's some flowers too with the petal count. There's some going to be with 3, 5, 8, 21, 13. Yes. So the sunflower has the most. Like, I think it's up to 144, right?
233, I think is the very biggest.
Yes. So it's the flowers or the seeds where you can see that. Now the vocabulary, just very quickly. So phytotaxis, is the distribution of the flower arrangement, and you can see it here how and why, like, well, why does it grow that way? Is it spiraling or not? Is it making a flower? Or is it? This is a cactus, by the way. This is a Symmetry, and it's a succulent. Okay, so another just term out there, we're going to get a little bit technical. So, primordia. The first almost like cell tissue that is going to come out of the plant from the middle, which is the meristem. So that's the first shoot that is going to come out. And some of those shoots are underneath the meristem, as you can see on that, but it shows you here. And it's just, bringing that next one, but you cannot see it in this underneath with many of the photography or microscopes or some other like x-rays, you can see that they're underneath, they're there. So, yeah, the primordia is actually plural, primordium is singular. And then you have the divergence angle, the way how leaves grow, right? From the first one to the second one. So the first one, you have it here, and then the second one, typically, not all of them, but on some plants, will be at 137 degrees, or 37.5 degrees, where the next one is going to be. Now the next one is going to be at 137.5 degrees, and so on and so on and so on. And that pattern is the golden ratio. But it's also found with the Fibonacci sequence, which you see here some of the spirals going one way is 3, going this way it's 2. And those numbers live in the Fibonacci sequence. So scientists call spirals peristiches. And you see this on the pine cone. So this pine cone, you see spiraling one way, but then the other way. With those numbers too, with the Fibonacci sequence numbers, which is 8 and 13 here. It's just so typical of the pine cone. Now some cactus anatomy, but I'm not going to go too much into that. But just for you to understand that there's areoles, spines, tubercules, and you can see over there, it shows you on top which one's which. This is one of my pictures that I have here that if you count spirals, you'll find those numbers. The Fibonacci sequence numbers are there. But I'm going to let you have that for homework. And you go. But you can see here, the pineapple that we're showing you. I used to just count the spirals one way, but you can actually count them the other way. And when you count them, you get these numbers. You can, not necessarily all of them are perfect, Fibonacci sequence, fruits or flowers, but most of them will give you those numbers. Some flowers too, one way and the other. Broccoli, we have the broccoli over there and the niche over there. But this is another pattern. It's a self-repeating pattern, like from the first head to this, all this little small heads. I think there was a count one time with Chris, one of the co-authors, mathematician, and Dorothy. I think they went all the way to 7 families or 7 little kids, little heads, having the same pattern, repeating, self-repeating. So, I don't know if you can see here, how it repeats, and then you go to this one, it will repeat itself, and then you go to another one, it will repeat itself. So 7 times it went down and repeat itself. So that's almost like a fractal. You can see here, if you break it down, the spirals, 8 times one way, the other way 13, and it's still Fibonacci sequence. And I found another one. There's 5. That's for homework too. Cabbage, the red cabbage. Did you know that this is actually like it's a bud? It's curled. It's like having the leaves all curled up. And when you cut it, you see the spirals. You see the spirals. This is just some of the pictures I just wanted to throw out there. But you see some, counts, and I'm like, okay, 3, 5, okay. This orchid, it's symmetrical. So it's actually a copy of the other side. And now we're going to have in transition into the book, The Plants Know Math. But first, I want to say that by me contributing and working with these guys, they've done so much beautiful work, and I learned so much from them, and I learned how to see my patterns on my plants that I have, photographed. And now I'm like looking at so many plants with a different vision now. But yes, hopefully you get to do that same thing. So thank you.
So, this is the book that Victor and I worked on together, along with our 3 scientist co-authors. And basically, the book looks at the human fascination with plant spirals, going back as far as the ancient Greeks. The book tells stories about the scientists who found themselves almost magnetically or hypnotically drawn to these spirals, and the different ways that they tried to answer the question of why these spirals occur so often in plants. We also had fun being creative as possible. And so the book includes Fibonacci poems, whose lines match the sequence of the Fibonacci sequence. Lots of hands-on activities. Victor gave you some homework, but there are more in the book. And even recipes. And Victor took many of the photos for To Plants Know Math, including the beautiful photo of the fiddlehead on the cover from Costa Rica. Yes. And several of his photos that appear in the book are also part of this beautiful exhibition that's hanging next door, including the mammillaria cactus that's mostly black and very mysterious in Victor's photo, that to me looks like it came from outer space, but Victor says he was inspired by an eclipse. I personally take all the credit for finding Victor as the book's photographer. The scientists rejected hiring some other ones that I suggested because they felt that their photos weren't any better than what the scientists could take themselves. They wanted someone whose photographs they could not take, and that was Victor. First I found his website with, I think, the noto cactus on it. hanging up there, but that one went kind of viral. And in addition to being spiral, it's like a spiral viral thing. And then I got the scientist's approval, and then I nearly despaired because I couldn't get Victor to write me back. He had a website, he had an email address, and when he finally did, he said I'd sent him so many emails that he thought I was spam. So, as Anna mentioned in her introduction, my role in this complicated book project, which took us 13 years, a Fibonacci number, we should have been warned. We blew past 8. At that point, our editor retired. But somehow Princeton did not give up on us, and my role was to be the writer. And I'm going to just speak briefly today about 2 people that we write about. It's always good for a science book to have rock stars, and our rock stars are 2 of the best, Leonardo da Vinci and Alan Turing. Leonardo was, to our knowledge, the first person ever to classify plant patterns, describing specific ways that leaves or branches are inserted around the stem. Although he writes on this notebook page, I hope you can all read it, that there are 4 modes of insertion of leaves. He actually only describes 3 here, but there's a tantalizing scribble indicating his sketch of a 4th. That's the one circled in pink with the question marks. And he also has some crossed out words that have not been transcribed before. So this is his notebook passage on leaf arrangement, and we have electronically flipped the page to make your reading easier, because you may recall that he wrote in mirror writing. Here's a translation of the insertion of the branches on plants. These leaves have 4 modes of growing, one above another. The first, which is the most universal, is that the 6th always originates over the 6th below. The second is that the 2 third ones above are over the 2 third below. And the third way is that the 3rd above is over the 3rd below. Did you get that? Not easy to understand at first glance, but these are extraordinary observations for their time in the 15th century. And so Leonardo claims that for the leaves, there are 4 modes or types of arrangements. So the first mode, that he describes will later become known as a quincunx. I try and say that 5 times faster. He correctly notes that this arrangement is often found in nature. Basically, you have 5 leaves forming the pattern, and the 6th leaf is aligned directly below the first leaf. Surprisingly, Leonardo's drawing here is less than illuminating, but in a related section of his notebooks, he describes the mode again, writing that the insertion of the leaves turns round each branch in such a way as that the 6th leaf above is produced over the 6th leaf below. This is the first hint ever at spirals in plants that we know of. Leave it to Leonardo. But what about the 4th mode, which Leonardo has crossed out? No translator ever included it in a publication. Our mathematician co-author, Chris Golay, had a lot of fun trying to decode this with his daughter. And their best guess is that it says, for the 4th mode, it is the fir tree that makes something like. So, if they're right, Leonardo was thinking of a fir tree's branches as an example of his 4th mode. In nature, these grow in groups of 4 or sometimes more, with single branches sometimes appearing in between the groups. Although the groups of branches might appear to be all the same height, actually they're not quite level. In fact, if you look at a small fir, like a Christmas tree, you have to keep yours. Chris has like a closet full of Christmas trees. Drives his wife nuts. You will see that the needles growing out of the trunk, together with young branches, form a pretty dense set of very regular spirals, with none of the nodes at exactly the same height. So do you think their decoding was right? On to Alan Turing, another genius. No doubt you know him as the British computer genius whose cryptology work at Bletchley Park against the Nazis in World War II was dramatized in the movie The Imitation Game, with Turing played, for better or for worse, by Benedict Cumberbatch. In fact, the study of plant spirals ran like a green thread through Turing's short life, 1912 to 1954. So here he is in his youth, in a drawing made by his mother. While all the other kids are off playing field hockey, Turing is staring at a daisy. At the center of the daisy are spirals. And 30 years later, in his final years, Turing turned his attention once again to plant spirals. His investigations marked a crucial turning point, Turing being the first to use a computer to tackle the question of why Fibonacci spirals appear in plants. After the war, he had a new tool at his disposal, the world's first commercial computer, a Ferranti Mark I. And he had, as usual, a radically new way of looking at the world. In 1951, he wrote that he was working on a mathematical theory that he believed would explain many patterns in nature, from spots on animals to Fibonacci numbers in plants. And here you can see he has numbered every seed on the sunflower head as he is doing his research. If you think Victor is patient. Turing also was incredibly dedicated. Now, here he is looking at chemical instabilities in an attempt to understand the formation of plant spirals and animal spots. Because his computer was so primitive, he had to fill in all the chemical concentration values by hand. Turing was the first to show that pattern could arise spontaneously from an instability without any internal pre-patterning or external influence. And decades later, his concept became relevant to fields like chaos theory and dynamical systems in physics, and it's now known as the Turing instability. And here is red ring made an especially powerful visual, a drawing showing bud growth. Who knew that Turing worked on this stuff, right? He has depicted the meristem, which Victor mentioned, the very growing tip of the plant, as an empty circle at the center. And surrounding that zone is the red ring where the primordia, the young plant organs, first appear. As the stem grows, the primordia drift outwards and increase in size, as shown by the larger black spots. Turing's life cut short, likely by suicide, although it could never be definitively determined. Turing never completed his work of trying to understand why plant spirals might occur. Seeking to solve the puzzle, he focused on the transitions between different spiral modes. He saw that pairs of spirals in plants, the peristiches, can change in only two possible ways, and that one of those ways was from one pair of Fibonacci numbers to the next. Ultimately, Turing's genius was in showing how complex patterns can emerge one circle at a time. Seeing his work on this dynamical model led our co-author Stéphane, who's a physicist in Paris, to reflect on how it came to be. Should I do it in a French accent? I often find myself asking how Turing moved from his computing machine to the problem of plant spirals, Stéphane said. What was the connection? Finally, I realized that they both involved exactly the same approach. With the computer, he looked at how a human makes computations, identifying the basic steps. He then reproduced these steps in the simplest possible machine, showing that it could do all the possible computations. The result is that a simple process, repeated over time, can lead to the most complex things you can imagine. This is also why Turing pioneered the idea of artificial intelligence. So there's a connection, even between AI and Fibonacci spirals, in the way that they are built by a simple, repetitive process, a dynamical system. This is very good. Okay, no, there's just one. So, next door, there's a little machine that you have to look at before you go. It's called a crocograph. We had already planned to have this exhibition, give this talk, and then Victor sent me a photo of this and said, like, oh, by the way, the grid happens to have this contraption. And we really couldn't believe our luck, because it's this delightful handmade machine from the 1980s that could, when it was working, chart plant spirals on paper. And it was made by a French botanist, Nicolas Allais, that's a silent H. Here in this notebook that he wrote in English, you can see the spirals charted for a Lumerocereus, right, cactus, whose spirals are at an angle of 154 4.2 degrees from each other. Okay, the machine is totally obsolete. It's been supplanted by computer programs, as Alain's own notes show, and he didn't take himself too seriously, and even at the back of the book has a cartoon of a Stone Age version of the chronograph, but you should really take a look. It's very delightful, and it really shows his ingenuity and just like sheer delight in what it was to chart plant spirals. So that's by the back door. I mean, you'll see it's made of hand-carved wood and has like a red pen stuck in it. You had to actually make the dots by hand, we figured out. But you could turn a crank and it would give you the right angles. And the very last. So the very last chapter that we wrote for Do Plants Know Math was suggested by our editor, who wondered, along with another early reader, well, what about animals? And yesterday, as I was walking, or 2 days ago actually, as I was walking in the Botanical Gardens, I came upon this huge pink snail whose shell grows in a spiral. So now this is the audience participation part. What do you think? Is this the same spiral that you find in plants, and why or why not? Is it a logarithmic spiral, like a Fibonacci spiral, as opposed to an Archimedean spiral, where every successive turn is the same distance apart? Well, what's different between a plant and an animal? Do you think you could find these Fibonacci spirals in animals? Anybody chime in if you have them?
Nautilus, petrified shell.
Right, so logarithmic spiral also. And ammonites, exactly. People also contain many spirals. Oh, my hair! And the Texas humidity, my hair is everything is gigantic spiral. Okay, so one way to think about this is bilateral symmetry. So almost all animals, or probably virtually all animals, have bilateral symmetry, but plants have radial symmetry. So it's a different system. And if you think about why, I mean, what's the difference? The most important difference between a plant and an animal is that an animal has to be able to move. Animals move. Plants are rooted to their stem, right? And so you get growth, on a sort of a flat plane for in a sunflower head, or you would get two spirals. I mean, it's really impossible to think of an animal that would have spirals going two directions, because they need a head and they need a back end, and you can't think of a plant that has a head and back end in the same way. It's like the demands of these life forms are just very different. And so our chapter on the difference between plants and animals turned out to be how you might assume, like everybody says, oh, what about this, the snail shells and the nautiluses, but they're really quite different in the way that they perform. So I was trying to think of like a pineapple or a sunflower head trying to move, or a snail having double spirals. I mean, the snail shell is interesting because it's not, the body of the snail is bilaterally symmetrical, as you can see with the two antennae, but the shell is not bilaterally symmetrical. There are left-handed snails and there are right-handed snails. There's that famous story of Jeremy, the left-handed snail, which was very rare, and people were rushing to try and find him a mate because he couldn't mate with a right-handed snail. So scientists all over the world rushed to these left-handed snails, and all their offspring were the dominant right-handed snails, so it was a little bit of a fail. Anyway, on that note, thank you so much for coming today, and for coming to see Victor's gorgeous photographs, and eat and drink and talk, and buy a book. We have monkey and dog books here, local booksellers. So wonderful of them to come and join us. And thank you to Anna and to everybody here who has helped make this exhibition possible, and we're really just so grateful to be here.
So thank you, everybody. We're going to do a short Q&A where y'all are welcome to ask these two amazing speakers questions. So please, if anyone has a question, I'll walk over to you so you can speak the question into the microphone. And after our short Q&A, we will do the raffle drawings. So get your tickets ready. But yes, does anyone want to open up with any questions for Victor and Nancy?
We're not the scientists.
Yes.
The golden rule.
Let's do this.
That's okay, I'll talk about it. The golden rule.
Yes.
How does that, what is the golden rule?
So you have different spirals, right? And you're trying to make sense of it. And by describing it, you have to kind of go into finding out why that spiral is happening. So mathematicians have a better form of describing it, and that's why you saw different kinds of spirals. And so they just noticed that some of these insects or maybe plants have this same pattern, and it's the same constant rule that is following. And the Fibonacci sequence also is having these numbers, this Fibonacci sequence, and within the Fibonacci sequence, you can find the spirals. So it can be technical, but yes, you can study the spirals and see the patterns, and then project them into the plants, and then the plants tell you, yeah, I'm this, and this other plant is this, and it's giving you the same pattern. So we're like, huh, it's all in nature, and it's the same constant numbers or ratios and spirals. Yeah.
So with
The ratio between two Fibonacci numbers will converge to 1.6.
1.61, and it keeps going.
So would Fibonacci sequence be part of the golden rule?
It's related.
It's related.
Yeah, it's related. So in the golden, so you have the golden mean, the golden angle, the golden section, the golden number, but they mean different things. So the golden number, the golden what's it called? Ratio can give you that the way leaves get that angle, the divergence angle. Yeah. So that 137.5 degrees is where the next leaf is gonna grow, and then the next one. So they get it from the golden ratio. Yeah.
We have a question up back here.
Yes.
Hi. My question is, what prompted you to start studying these plant patterns?
So again, like looking at this, you know, insects, flowers, going to different countries, seeing it on the computer. When I'm photographing, when I'm focus stacking, which that's one thing that I forgot to talk about focus stacking, the way I do the plants, and I'll get to that one. So the answer is me looking at these patterns, and then later on being invited to collaborate on this book got me into seeing these patterns and understanding the patterns. So I just was fascinated to understand it after they gave me some vocabulary and then understand it. So hopefully you can understand a little bit. If not, here's a book. But that's really quickly on the way, the method that I use for some of the pictures for the plants, which is still live, that doesn't, an animal keeps moving and it's hard to do multiple pictures with them being in the same distance or not moving. And plants typically, unless they're blooming, you know, they're not moving. So I can do a focus stacking method where I do take multiple pictures and get from the top of the spine to the bottom of the spine, and say, let's say 20 to 50 images that I take to get the details, combine them in a software and create the final image. By creating that final image, you can see all these details. But, I mean,
That's why the scientists said they could not take the photos that Victor was taking. He's using this focus stacking method in addition to his talents and incredible eye. But it's really a very, very technical way to do it.
yes, so if you look through a microscope, right, you only see a depth of field. You don't see the subject. So you see only very tiny depth of field. So you cannot see the entire thing, especially with the macro lens or microscope. So you're taking all those images and then combine them, and that's how you can see. And actually, those pictures out there in the back, they're like 4 by 4 feet, but those can be blown like almost 10 by 10, and you can still see the detail. And that's part of the method that I use, the focus technique, and that's how you can get it.
Do you have any other questions?
Is there an analogy between symmetry above ground and symmetry in the roots?
That's a good one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's branching.
Yeah, fractal.
It's a fractal branching, but that's a good question. I have not like studied too much with that.
I mean, it never came up in research in the book.
Yeah, the woman who authored Searching for the Mother Tree, who's a forester out in the Northwest, makes a little bit of reference to that, I think. But she's talking more about actually the communication between different root structures and different species. And there's a little bit of a reference to that.
That's something that I would like to do more research about.
That's fractal roots.
Well, I think, I'm not a scientist, but now just imagine if a flower is going to blossom, it needs the nutrients, it needs photosynthesis. So if all the leaves were all stacked, only the top one would get the nutrients from the sun, etc. So I think perhaps, I'm not God, but maybe they developed that way in order to get more sunlight.
Okay, so we talk about that in the book, and actually the scientists talk about it.
Yes. So there's
It's something that people have thought about for centuries, actually. Like, oh, of course, they all need sunlight, so they'll be at 137 degrees from each other, and that would maximize sunlight exposure. But I think what convinces scientists that's not convincing is that there are many other arrangements where the plants really grow fine and they are stacked on top.
at the same time, sun is not necessarily
All
just
time.
on the top, on the side, and then different parts of the world, different.
But it's a great idea.
Take on that.
Yes.
Oh,
Good.
I'm curious, so there are different patterns of plants there, right?
Yes.
Some are in their evolutionary range, maybe for pollination, in different patterns, nutrients.
For
We don't know, actually.
yeah.
I mean, the scientists, like the coda to the book was, we hope that will be the next research direction, because it would be fascinating to find out if there wasn't a.
Yeah, there's has to be a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's in the book a physics reason, there's a geometry reason, but is there an evolutionary one? Nobody really knows that.
It'll take 13 more.
Exactly.
Yes.
I had a question about your beautiful artwork, images, I don't know what to call it. Some are identified as photographs with the layers of stacking,
Yes.
and some are identified as acrylic.
Oh, so these, actually two people brought that up. The acrylic versus canvas is just the type of print that it is. It's not that I'm doing any acrylic painting or anything, it's just the way it was printed.
Okay,
So
so these are all the same kind of digital image?
Yes, correct.
And the difference is how they were put on the,
Correct.
yeah, okay, thank you.
I mean, I have just as a little cover, I have to say, the physicist in Paris, he got quite competitive with Victor. And so he bought that stacking software and he started trying to make his own. They were never as good. Don't tell him I said that.
Any other questions?
Yes.
So, weather events and toilet bowls spin in opposite directions in northern and southern hemispheres. What about plants?
What about where?
What about plants? Do the spirals change direction?
But the spirals are going two directions.
They don't spin in different directions.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
they
myth.
do,
That's a
the
myth.
parastickies or the spirals, they actually turn in both ways. So you have some spirals going clockwise, and then the other one's counterclockwise. So you have both there. But I don't know if it makes a difference. Yes, below the equator and above the equator.
I'm saying that the toilet paper, the toilet water going,
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
a myth. It doesn't go under.
Oh, it doesn't. I think I told somebody that was happening. Yeah. Sorry.
Have you encountered any plants that stumped you from, doesn't have an obvious symmetry, maybe it's completely asymmetrical or no pattern that you can actually derive?
I mean, there's many plants that, yes, for example, the cacti, you can see on the mammillaria, those species do give you that pattern, like so pronounced. And a lot of these cactus and succulents show that pattern. But I did not know until the book that I started looking at other plants on the leaf divergence, on the distribution of the leaves that is there too. So I'm just starting to see, even in fruit, you can see the pineapple, the strawberry, the broccoli, romanesco broccoli, and many other fruits and plants. Yeah, tropical plants.
If you're interested in that. So, strawberries, corn, peace lily, those crazy flower stalks. Those are the ones that stick onto this. This is called the monsters. And actually, the book spends a lot of time talking about work that scientists have done to understand those patterns, which are much more complex than a regular Fibonacci sequence. And they ended up calling them quasi-symmetric.
It's irregular.
The lily flower is symmetric.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at the spiral patterns are irregular in irregularity. There are patterns that are not obvious. So that was something that they spent a lot of time figuring out. And buy the book and you'll get the whole
So,
story.
for example, this daisy, African daisy, if you notice how many petals it has, it's
I haven't counted.
okay, 21. 21 is in the Fibonacci sequence. So if you pay attention to some flowers, it's not all of them. You can't count those, but go out there and start, counting some of these petals, and some will give you,
But there are a lot of flowers like dogwood that have four petals.
Right.
Yes,
There's
yes,
a lot
yes.
that are
More
not.
symmetry, yeah. So, but it's not necessarily not on the flower, it could be on the leaves.
Right, those are actually not petals on the Broadway. Those are,
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, so we have a raffle, right? And the raffle is for two of the books and some plants, 5 plants. Has anybody getting a ticket for the raffle? Okay, there's 2 there. Okay, because we're raffling 5 plants and 2 books. Okay, so who's gonna get this? You know? Oh, a lot of you went to this raffle. Yes, so the plants that are being raffled, they're here in the back on the round table. There's 5, and first winner, first pick. Is it already good? Okay, the first one is gonna be.
Six, 4, 9, 1, 8, 7, 5.
All right, let's do another one now. Fibonacci sequence style.
One, then the third.
That's another one, yeah.
So second number is 6, 4, 9, 1, 8, 8, 4. 884.
88 was on the.
Now it's not here, then we go for another one.
Okay, no one for that one? Okay. So, choose another one.
6491920.
You can get a $5 later. And the next one, I don't think I have to call all the numbers, right? The last four is 1890. 1890. The next one is 1870. All right. Is that it? Or
I think one more.
one more,
And
right?
these are just plants?
One
Or
more,
the
and
books?
then we-
For the plants.
Yeah, okay. So one more plant.
All right, so the next one is 1891. Okay, this next unit is for the books. So we have two books. All right. So the next one is actually 1900. You said, okay. 1900. Who's close to the book? And the next one is 1872.
Thanks so much.
Oh.
Is that you? That's you?
Anybody? All right, that's it. I think the next drawing is for a canvas, and it's going to be one of those 24 by 24 inch canvas. So the next one is, sorry, I said one. But, okay. It's at 1 o'clock.
Okay, so.
But if you're, do it now. I'm going to do it now. Yes? All right. Everybody else now. How much thank you? Have somebody in the audience showing up. Okay. By dancing? All right. This 1878. No one? 1878.
No one?
That's me. No. No, 1878? Going once? Twice? Maybe that was the 1 o'clock thing. Alright. The next one, or final. 1912. So close. No one? 1912?
What if we just round up to 8?
But 1911.
Those are the ones that came at 9.
1912. Wow. Alright, the third one. This is a Fibonacci number too. Oh, that has some Fibonacci numbers. 1883. You cannot see that number. Yes. All right. Any other 24 by 24? You can think about it. Thank you guys.